SIL asked me to babysit just once for a job interview, then dumped her kids on me daily while posting date nights online, so I finally kicked her out. There are moments in life when you realize you've been played for a fool, when the trust you generously offered has been stomped all over. And let me tell you, that sickening realization, that gut punch of betrayal, hit me harder than anything when I uncovered the shocking truth about my own sister-in-law. I'm 25, and I've always believed in supporting family. But I also believe in boundaries, something I quickly learned was a foreign concept to some people. My job is demanding. Working from home means being glued to my screen, constantly focused, jumping between virtual meetings. It's a delicate balance, and it was working for me. Until one morning, my sister-in-law, Melanie, 28, showed up at my doorstep. She looked absolutely frazzled, desperate. Melanie had always been a bit of a whirlwind, but I'd never seen her this raw. She told me her divorce had left her life in shambles. Now, she had a job interview, a big one, that could turn everything around. The problem? No childcare. She just needed someone to watch her kids for a few hours. It seemed reasonable, and despite knowing Melanie could be unreliable, I agreed. It was just for one day, right? Wrong. The very next morning, the kids were back. Another follow-up interview, she said. Then, by the end of that week, she excitedly announced she got the job. I congratulated her, but inside, I was already struggling. Juggling my demanding work and her two energetic children was a lot. Every morning, she'd drop them off early and vanish, only to reappear in the evening to pick them up. At first, I told myself it was temporary. She just needed time to get settled. But as weeks bled into a month, it became brutally clear Melanie had no intention of finding real childcare. She never once mentioned daycare or a sitter. She just kept bringing them over, like it was a permanent arrangement. I tried dropping hints. I'd say, "Wow, it's tough balancing work and the kids," or "They're getting so restless cooped up here." She'd brush it off every single time. "Daycare is so expensive," she'd whine. "I just need to get more stable first." My husband, Mason, 26, was sympathetic, but he was also hesitant. "She has no one else," he'd point out. "My parents can't help, and she's doing this alone." I understood that, truly, but I also knew it wasn't my responsibility to raise someone else's kids while trying to keep my own career afloat. Then, little things started to niggle at me. Melanie always showed up in full makeup, dressed impeccably, way too nicely for someone supposedly working a regular office job. I told myself she just wanted to present herself well, but something about it felt off. Then there were the inconsistencies. Some days she dropped them off late, claiming her shift started late. Other days, she picked them up early, with no explanation. What kind of job had hours this erratic? I pushed those thoughts aside, until the day it all exploded. It happened completely by accident. I was scrolling through social media during my lunch break when I saw it. A mutual friend had tagged Melanie at a fancy restaurant. The post was from that very afternoon, right in the middle of her supposed work hours. The caption read, "Finally getting some much-needed time to myself. A little self-care never hurt anyone." My stomach dropped. I frowned, clicked on Melanie's profile, and found most of her posts hidden from me. That was strange. She'd never blocked me before. Curiosity gnawing at me, I switched to an old, rarely used account. From there, I saw everything. Dozens of posts. Pictures of Melanie on dates, at brunches, even taking short weekend trips. My blood ran cold. She wasn't working. She had never had a job. She had been using me for free childcare while she went out and enjoyed her new, single life. I felt physically sick. I had been burning the candle at both ends, running myself ragged, trying to balance my career and babysitting, while she had been lying to my face the entire time. And it wasn't just the lying, it was the sheer entitlement. She hadn't even bothered to find real childcare. She had manipulated me into doing it for free, under the guise of turning her life around. I stared at my screen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to call her and absolutely let loose. But I knew she'd just come up with more excuses. The kids, thankfully, were with their father that day, so I decided to wait. I needed a plan. The next morning, Melanie showed up as usual, all smiles, acting like nothing was wrong. The kids were groggy, bundled in their jackets as she tried to usher them inside. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking the entrance. She started with her usual chatter, something about her crazy schedule and how lucky she was to have me. I cut her off. "Melanie, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. We need to talk. She blinked, confusion clouding her features. But I didn't give her a chance to play dumb. I pulled out my phone, opened that social media post, the one with her clinking glasses with some guy at a rooftop bar, posted when she was supposed to be at work, and held it up. Her smile froze. Care to explain? I asked as calmly as I could. For a second, she just stared, scrambling for an excuse. Then, a fake laugh. She waved it off like it was nothing. Oh, that? Networking. It's part of my job. Sometimes I have to meet clients in casual settings. Cut the crap. I snapped, my calm facade cracking. You weren't networking. You weren't working, period. You've been dumping your kids on me while you go on dates, pretending to be some struggling single mom trying to get back on her feet. Her face twisted with irritation. She didn't even bother denying it anymore. Instead, she got defensive. You're overreacting, she shot back. I deserve to have some fun. I've been through a rough divorce. I need to put myself back out there. That's fine. I retorted, my voice rising. If you want a date, that's your business. But you lied to me. You used me. I've been bending over backward, juggling my own demanding job and your kids, all because you made it seem like you had no other choice. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I'm done, I stated, my voice low and firm. She blinked, as if she hadn't processed my words. I'm not babysitting for you anymore, I continued. If you need childcare, figure it out yourself. Daycares exist. Babysitters exist. You have plenty of options, but I am not one of them. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling. You're being selfish. You're making things so much harder for me. She even tried to guilt-trip me. You're abandoning your own nieces and nephews. They love spending time with you. They're great kids, I said, unwavering. But they are not my responsibility. Her anger morphed into desperate pleading. She started grasping at straws. I need to date. Finding a stable man is more important than any job. She then threw out the most ridiculous claim. You're sabotaging my kids' future by not helping me find them a father figure. I actually laughed. An incredulous, disbelieving laugh. That was her grand argument? That she needed to trick a man into being a stepdad before she even got a real job? She doubled down, insisting financial security would come once she had a husband. She even tried to act like she was thinking of the kids' best interests, as if lying to me and dumping them on me for free was some noble act of motherhood. Melanie, I said, cutting through her nonsense. I am not interested in enabling your delusions. If you want a man to take care of you, that's your choice. But you are not going to use me as a stepping stone to make it happen. That's when the tears started. Melanie had always been dramatic, and I wasn't falling for it. She sniffled, acting like I had just betrayed her, whining that she was trying her best, and I was making things so much harder. I stayed firm. You have one last chance, I told her. You can take your kids with you right now and figure something else out, or I can call someone to come get them. Either way, they are not staying here. She looked stunned. I think she had assumed that no matter what, I wouldn't actually push her kids out, that I'd give in, sigh, and say, just this one last time. But I was done. I repeated myself. You are not leaving your kids here. She tried to argue. I just need a few hours to figure things out. I'll come back later. No, I said flatly. If you have time to find dates, you have time to find childcare. Her face twisted in frustration. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to scream. But she knew she had no leverage. She grabbed the kids' hands, huffing. I'll remember this. You're being unbelievably cruel to a struggling mother. You can remember whatever you want, I replied, my voice steady. I'm not changing my mind. She stormed off, dragging the bewildered children behind her. I stood at the doorway, watching her go, feeling nothing but profound relief. I thought that was the end of it. But Melanie wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Later that day, Mason came home, looking concerned. Melanie had called him, crying, telling him I had kicked her kids out and was being cruel to a struggling single mom. Do you believe her? I asked him, my heart pounding. He sighed, shaking his head. He knew Melanie too well, but he still looked torn, guilty. She doesn't have anyone else, he muttered. That's not my problem. I shot back, frustration bubbling. I reminded him how I'd been doing both my job and hers for weeks. How I'd been patient, supportive, and understanding until I found out she was lying to my face. I could see the gears turning in his head. He wasn't happy about the situation, but he couldn't argue. Then I dropped the final bombshell. I told him about her ridiculous excuse, that finding a father figure was more important than getting a job. His face went blank for a moment. Then he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I'll talk to her, he promised. I wasn't sure what that would accomplish, but I appreciated him being on my side. I had expected Melanie to throw a fit, maybe even try a little more guilt-tripping, but I hadn't anticipated just how far she was willing to take it. For the next 2 days, silence. Then, on the third day, my phone buzzed. A social media notification. Melanie had written a long, dramatic post about how certain people in her life had abandoned her in her time of need. She painted herself as a struggling single mom, just trying her best, only to be cruelly turned away by someone who should have been there for her. It didn't mention my name, but it didn't need to. Anyone who knew us could figure it out. The comment section exploded with sympathizers. You're such a strong mama. You deserve better. And some people just don't understand what it's like to be a single mom. Then, the more pointed comments. Wow, I can't believe someone in your own family would do that to you. I rolled my eyes and put my phone down. I wasn't going to engage. I wasn't going to defend myself to strangers who had no idea what was actually going on. But Melanie wasn't satisfied with just online sympathy. An hour later, my phone rang. My mother-in-law. I debated ignoring it, but I knew she'd just keep calling. The moment I picked up, she jumped straight in. Breathless, she demanded, how could you turn your back on family? Melanie is struggling, and you humiliated her by refusing to help. Did Melanie tell you the truth? I asked, cutting her off. That she wasn't actually working? That she was lying to me and dumping her kids on me while she went on dates? There was a pause, then a heavy sigh. Well, she might have exaggerated a little, my mother-in-law conceded. But isn't it understandable? Isn't she just trying to get back on her feet? Finding a husband isn't the same thing as getting back on her feet, I shot back. She huffed like I was being unreasonable. Why can't you just help out for a little while longer? I have my own job, my own responsibilities, I explained, trying to keep my voice even. I'm not going to be manipulated into watching Melanie's kids just because she doesn't want to pay for childcare. My mother-in-law sighed again, this time deeper, filled with profound disappointment. I had hoped you would be more understanding. But if you're going to be so cold about it, then fine. That's perfectly fine by me, I replied, and hung up. I barely had a moment to breathe before Mason walked in, looking tense. He'd just gotten off the phone with his mother. He rubbed his face, sighing. I knew this was going to happen, he said. He admitted his mother had always babied Melanie, and now that Melanie had stirred up drama, she was falling right into her usual role, guilt-tripping everyone into doing what Melanie wanted. Do you think I did something wrong? I asked him, needing to hear it. No, he said immediately. He knew what his sister was like. He knew she had taken advantage of me. But he also knew his mother wasn't going to let this go anytime soon. Well, I said, that's her problem, not mine. That night, I got a text from Melanie. It was short, passive-aggressive. I hope you're happy, it read. Your selfishness is going to ruin her kids' future, and when they grow up to be bitter and broken, it will be your fault. I didn't respond. I thought that was the end of it. But Melanie had one last card to play. The next day, I got another call. This time, from one of Mason's aunts, a woman who usually stayed far away from family drama. She sounded hesitant, almost unsure if she should even be calling. I've heard some things, she said, and I wanted to know your side of the story. I appreciated that. Unlike my mother-in-law, she wasn't jumping to conclusions. So, I told her everything. The lies, the manipulation, the way Melanie had tried to use me as a free babysitter while she ran around looking for a new husband. The aunt let out a long sigh. You know, she said, this isn't the first time Melanie's pulled something like this. Apparently, before the divorce, Melanie had a habit of leaning on family whenever she wanted an easy way out of responsibility. Then, she said something that really stuck with me. It's funny, she mused. When Melanie needs something, she talks about family nonstop. But when she's fine, when she's got what she wants, she doesn't even bother checking in on the rest of us. That hit me hard, because it was absolutely true. Melanie only talked about family helping family when it benefited her. I thanked the aunt for calling, and she told me to just ignore the drama. People like Melanie thrive on attention, she advised. The best thing you can do is refuse to give her any. She was right. So that's exactly what I did. Melanie kept up her online pity party for another few days, but when she realized I wasn't engaging, she slowly lost steam. The comments dwindled. The sympathy dried up. And just like that, she moved on. Or so I thought. A week later, I got another text. This time, it wasn't from Melanie. It was from Mason's mother. And all it said was, "I hope you're ready to live with the consequences of your actions." I had no idea what she meant, but I had a very bad feeling. It was dramatic, vague, and completely unnecessary. Exactly like something she'd say when she was trying to stir up trouble. I showed the message to Mason. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "If my mom's getting this worked up," he said, "it means Melanie's up to something again." He told me to just ignore it, that it was probably another round of guilt tripping. But my gut screamed otherwise. And I was right. The very next morning, another call. This time, it was from Mason's cousin, who worked at a local daycare. She sounded hesitant, almost embarrassed, as she asked, "Annie, do you have plans to pick up the kids later today?" She quickly explained that Melanie had shown up at the daycare that morning, paid for one day, and told them that I would be picking up the kids at the end of the day. She claimed she had an emergency appointment and couldn't find another babysitter. She'd left my name, my number, and my address on the emergency contact form. She had just assumed I would take the kids. No, she had counted on it. I took a deep, shaky breath. "No," I told the cousin firmly. "I have not agreed to any of this. And no, I will not be picking them up." The cousin sounded visibly relieved. "I had a bad feeling about it," she admitted, "which is why I called you first." She said she'd handle it and let the daycare know that if Melanie didn't come back, they would call child services. I thanked her, then immediately called Melanie. She didn't pick up. Of course, she didn't. So I sent her a message instead. "I don't know what you were thinking," I typed, my fingers flying, "but I am not picking up your kids. Figure it out yourself." Not even 5 minutes later, she responded. She called me heartless. She called me spiteful. She said she couldn't believe I would be so cruel to my own nieces and nephews. And then, she tried to guilt trip me again. She claimed she had a date with a man who could be the father figure her kids desperately needed, and that I was sabotaging their future by refusing to help. I almost laughed out loud. How many dates did she go on in a day? And for how long? Did she just go on dates back to back, desperately looking for a stepfather? This woman had the absolute audacity to try and dump her kids on me again, this time through a third party, and was now acting like I was personally ruining her children's lives because I wouldn't go along with it. "Your children are your responsibility," I texted back. "And if you keep trying to shove them onto other people under false pretenses, you are going to end up in serious trouble." She fired back with something about how family is supposed to help each other, how I was obsessed with punishing her, and how she wouldn't forget this betrayal. "Do whatever you want," I wrote. "I'm done." Then I blocked her. I blocked her on social media, on my phone, every possible way she could contact me. I told Mason what happened. He wasn't surprised, just exhausted. "This is exactly why I've always kept my distance from Melanie," he said. "She's always been like this, entitled, selfish, manipulative." "Do you think your mom knew about Melanie's little daycare stunt?" I asked, a new suspicion forming. He hesitated, then admitted, "Probably." That explained his mom's cryptic text message. "I hope you're ready to live with the consequences of your actions." His mom had known what Melanie was planning, and she had blamed me in advance, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Mason sighed, running a hand down his face. Then he looked at me, his eyes resolute. "I think it's time we stopped dealing with them altogether." I had never loved him more than in that moment. A week passed with no contact. Then, one evening, Mason got a call from his mother. She left a voicemail. She was furious. She accused us of turning our backs on family, of leaving poor Melanie to fend for herself, and of abandoning 2 innocent children when we had the resources to help. Then she said something that made Mason pause. "I hope you two don't think you can come around during the holidays and pretend everything is fine. Family isn't just something you pick and choose when it's convenient for you." I saw the way Mason's jaw tightened as he listened to the message. Then he deleted it without responding. He turned to me and, with a wry smile, said, "I think we just got ourselves uninvited from Thanksgiving." I grinned. That's the best news I've heard all week. We agreed then and there. We were done with them. No more entertaining their guilt trips. No more trying to be the bigger people. No more letting them manipulate us into cleaning up Melanie's messes. The answer would always be no, because she was demanding something we weren't willing to give. Melanie must have realized that guilt tripping wasn't working anymore, because she changed her approach. A few days after we effectively shut down my mother-in-law's rant about the holidays, Melanie tried calling Mason. He didn't answer. Then she tried me. I didn't answer either. So, she left a voicemail. She sounded calm. Too calm. It worried me more than anything. She said she wanted to clear the air, and that she was willing to be reasonable if we were. Since when had she ever been reasonable? Mason rolled his eyes and ignored the message. We both knew what she was trying to do. Lure us into a conversation where she could twist things around and make us the villains again. But when she realized we weren't taking the bait, she switched tactics again. She showed up at our house. We were in the middle of eating dinner when we heard the knock. At first, we ignored it. Then the knocking turned into pounding. Mason sighed, got up, and opened the door just enough to see who it was. Melanie stood there, looking frustrated, but not angry. More desperate. She said she just wanted to talk. Mason told her, "We've already said everything that needs to be said." She asked if she could at least come inside because it was cold. Mason shut that down fast. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here on the porch." And then, without a shred of shame, Melanie launched into her speech. She claimed she understood why I was mad and why we were upset about what happened at the daycare. She even admitted that maybe she should have been more honest with me from the start. But then she said something that nearly made me choke on my drink. She expected me to understand that she was just trying to do what was best for her kids, and that meant finding them a father figure. She insisted that getting a job wasn't as important as making sure they had a stable home with a strong male role model. Mason scoffed. I put down my fork. I walked to the door, looked her dead in the eye, and told her, "Melanie, if Mason and I wanted kids, we would have kids. But we don't. And we sure as hell aren't going to play house with yours." She blinked, looking genuinely stunned for a moment before recovering. She argued that we had a home, we had stability, and she had just thought. Mason cut her off. "What you thought," he said, his voice laced with pure exasperation, "was that you could dump your responsibilities on us. But that's not happening. We are not some kind of co-parents." Melanie started getting defensive, saying she wasn't asking us to raise her kids, just to help out until she got on her feet. Mason shook his head. "No," he told her. "You didn't ask. You assumed. You decided that we owed you, but we don't." Melanie's face twisted with frustration. She turned to me. "Can't you at least admit that I'm trying? That I'm making an effort to build a better life for my kids?" I folded my arms. Effort doesn't mean lying to people, sneaking around, and dumping your kids on others so you can go on dates. If you really wanted a better life for them, you would get a real job and start acting like a responsible parent. She let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "You just don't get it. You don't have kids, so how could you possibly understand what it's like?" And that's when Mason delivered the final, devastating blow. "She's right," he said, his voice cold and clear. "We don't have kids. And that's exactly why we aren't going to spend our money and time raising someone else's. From now on, if you try to abandon your kids with us again, I will hand them straight over to their father, who is supposed to be their strong father figure, and file a complaint for child neglect." Melanie paled. She tried to stammer out a response, but Mason wasn't done. He made it clear that the same warning applied to his mother, too. If she thinks she can keep enabling Melanie and guilt-tripping us into playing along, she's going to find herself cut off just like her daughter. Melanie's face twisted into something ugly then, a mask of pure fury as she accused us of being heartless, of turning our backs on family, of choosing money over people. Mason didn't say anything. He just quietly, firmly, closed the door in her face. That night, as I sat back with a glass of wine, I thought about everything. The way Melanie had lied, the way my mother-in-law had excused it, and the way they both assumed Mason and I would just fall in line. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how little any of it actually mattered. Mason and I weren't the kind of people who lived our lives online. We barely posted, rarely engaged, and never cared about who was saying what. That was probably why I hadn't reacted to Melanie's ridiculous pity party post when I first saw it. Because what was the point? A handful of people had seen it, maybe 50 at most, and none of them were people whose opinions I cared about. It wasn't worth the energy, and that was the fundamental difference between us. Melanie needed an audience. She needed attention. She needed people to rally behind her. But Mason and I, we didn't need validation from anyone, least of all her. So, if she thought she could run to family and play the victim, twisting the story to make us look cruel, she was wasting her time. The ones who actually knew us, they already understood that we didn't entertain nonsense. She could cry. She could rant. She could paint herself as a martyr. None of it would change reality. And the reality was simple. Mason and I didn't know her anything. Mason glanced over at me and asked, "Do you feel better?" I grinned, a genuine, relieved smile spreading across my face. "Oh, Mason," I said, "I feel so much better." We sat back, finished our wine, and simply enjoyed the quiet. The liberating, peaceful quiet.